Well, that
Hey!
was my weekly exercise done. I can take off this, my weekly bop to our what are you doing? What's going on?
We have a very special guest this week. I'm really excited when we have guests from this country. So I thought I've even got the flag here. I even brought it in her honor as well. So we're not going to say who the guest is just yet. But Maria, how are you? How's your week been going?
I'm good, thank you. I've had a good week. Yeah, it's been busy, but it's been productive. I can't complain, which is really rare for me, isn't it? What about you?
Likewise, it's been very interesting. I was just talking with a bureau in America there, and we're all kind of seeing similar things in terms of a lot of new inquiries starting to come in, a lot of bookings starting to happen. So that feels quite good. It feels like now there's light at the end of the tunnel. Things are starting to happen. A lot of last minute bookings, which is fantastic. So
yeah,
but
good.
what an 18 months this has been.
It's not over yet. No. I don't think. But hopefully we know what we're doing going forward.
There's two words I think have been used a lot during this past 18 months. One is the word unprecedented. I think we're probably unfed up for that word.
Actually, ban it.
Pivot was probably the other one that got used a lot. But the other one I think has been very useful for us all thinking, and I think a lot of my clients, probably a lot of your clients are talking about a lot, is this idea of resilience.
Yes, very good segue. Good segue.
Very good. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, resilience for your speaking business and how that can help you in your speaking business. Our guest this week, which is why I have the flag, is Dr. Marie-Helene Pelletier, better known to our colleagues as MH or Dr. P, which is actually a lot easier for me to pronounce. So Dr. P holds both a PhD and an MBA from the University of British Columbia and teaches leadership resilience in the UBC School of Business. Dr. P is a leadership resilience and workplace mental health expert. She's an award-winning work psychologist who has led workplace mental health strategy in senior leadership roles at various organizations, including Sun Life Financial. She's a past director on the boards of the Canadian Psychological Association and the International Association of Applied Psychology, and a very active member of the Global Clinical Practice Network of the World Health Organization. So please join us in welcoming Dr. Pelletier.
Thank you so much, James and Maria. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. I'm going to call you MH because it just fits so well, because it also stands for mental health. How cool is that? It's like you knew all those years ago that this is what you were going to end up doing. So fabulous. So let me start, MH, with a question about your background is psychology, business, and your expertise is in resilience, which is why we want to talk about resilience. How is resilience particularly important for speakers at the moment?
Yes, fantastic question, and important for all of us. And if we narrow this down, a lot of speakers work on their own or with very small teams. We're an N of one in most cases. And by N of one, that means we are either doing or overseeing everything that's happening in our businesses. And in the past 18 months, particularly, the demands have increased, whether it's demanding to change how we do things, demanding on even on a personal side of our lives, right? The demands have increased. And if we've continued to maintain some supply of energy, then we've maintained some kind of ratio. But if we've maintained the same types of supply with the demands increasing, then it likely has tapped into our resilience, which really just means persisting through adversity and making it out even stronger. And I try to stay away from the term we used to use, which was a bit of bouncing back, right? Because it's almost as if bouncing back does not quite fit now that we've been through this for 18 months. It's a mix of acute stressors, chronic ones, some that are still present. And the notion of just bouncing back out of it feels way too superficial for what we're dealing with. But we don't want to get rid of the concept. The concept is paying attention to how many demands do we have, how much supply do we bring, and as speakers, as an N of one, we very much need to pay attention to this ratio to continue to do what we love.
I think it's tough, actually, as you said, you summarized it, that N of one, that feeling of being on your own and having to find your own solutions. And imagine that adds additional stress, that it feels like it's all on your shoulders, doesn't it?
It can. And what I think is important is that we're objectively an N of one. We're objectively not a multinational, with a large number of teams. At the same time, an N of one does not mean, in fact, it has to not mean isolation, right? It has, sometimes we'll have team members, part-time team members, mentors, a community of speakers. Many of us are members of associations, right, at our regional levels, but also global levels. And we want to outreach and support each other in a number of ways. So there is some business connections, and there are some more network social connections, in addition, of course, to all the supports we get and should work to nourish in our personal lives as well.
So on that kind of topic, that you mentioned, that kind of N of one, in many of our speaking businesses, it's either you are that only person, or you maybe have an assistant or a partner that kind of supports you in that business as well. How should the speakers that are watching this, how should they think about workplace mental health in what they do? Because we often think workplace mental health, well, that's something for big organizations. It doesn't really apply to me and our small business, what we're doing. So how can some of the learnings from workplace mental health be applied to the workplace that we have as speakers, which is sometimes in a studio like this, but sometimes on a stage?
Exactly. And I'm going to start by saying, James, it's a similar way to how, whether it was early in most professional speakers' work, or sometimes it's something we do as things evolve, we often need to think about our work as a business, and possibly even write a business plan or update our business plan, right? We'll use similar processes that large corporations are using when they launch a new product or a new organization, right? And what that does is that it allows us to use various concepts. What's your market? What's the appetite for your type of speaking, whatever, and land this in the work we do. And each time any of us who's done it, it pays off. It's a good practice, right? It allows us to narrow down, go to our core, know our next actions. It's good. So similarly, workplace mental health approaches have initially been developed for large organizations. Yay for us, we can just take it, right, and bring it to what we do. And to just give us, I can give you specific ideas there, but really the point is, these same processes that we're using in business, we want to bring them, even if we're an N of one with a few people around us, or a small N.
So to give us an example then, you're based in the BC, and one of my favorite TV series of all time was filmed where you live. Battlestar Galactica, one of the greatest sci-fi TV series ever, was filmed in BC. And I fell in love with that part of the world you're in just now from watching that TV show. I thought at some point I'm going to visit this place. Actors, there's some similarities in terms of actors and speakers. Not lots of similarities, but some similarities. But one of them is how they have to deal with rejection. So as actors, you're going up for parts all the time. You're basically not going to get 95%, maybe 99% of them. As speakers, we're being considered alongside maybe other great speakers all the time. So we're kind of having to deal with that rejection of not maybe winning that gig. Or sometimes even when you're on stage, you go on stage and it doesn't work out like you'd hoped. You don't get the kind of response. You maybe kind of get a form of rejection perhaps from the audience. So how can we, strengthen our kind of mental health as speakers to deal with that type of rejection?
Yes, absolutely. And what you're diving into is one of the factors, and there are, I'm going to say, about 13 factors that large corporations look at, and I can narrow them down to which we should look at. But one of them has to do with our own psychological health, our own work-life balance, which allows us to almost like build a surplus such that when drawbacks or things not working the way you'd like, or multiple rejection week after week for a stretch, when they come, we'll still be, navigating at a level that allows us to stay our focused, positive, energized self. And we could talk about this for a long time, but I'll bring up two key categories and some examples in each of them. But in the world of resilience and overall psychological health, often the best tools we have is what we use when people are dealing with very tough situations, fully depressed, fully anxious, these kinds of things. But these strategies we can use now, earlier, when things are mostly fine, so that we can protect our resilience and psychological health. Two main categories. One of them, behavioral strategies, and another one, cognitive strategies. And we could talk about this for a long time, and I'm really passionate, so I'll have to rein myself in here. But I'll focus on a few key ones. On the behavioral side, there are 4 that are really critical. And here's the thing. Your audience, you would know what these 4 are. The challenge is it's not in knowing them, it's in implementing them. And again, as an N of 1, that implementation is key. So the 4 are, number 1, exercise. And within exercise, we want 3 types. We want the cardio, the strength training, and meditative type activity, like yoga or meditation. Okay, exercise. Yep. Second is nutrition, which has a significant impact on our psychological health, not just physical. The third one is sleep, protecting our sleep. And the fourth one is relationships, spending time with people we enjoy spending time with, which for me today, yes, I've got you two with me, I'm happy. But, right, these are, I know, and I mean it actually. So these would be 4 things that are at the basis of the pyramid on the behavioral side. And the critical piece is, as an N of 1, is landing them, all of them ideally, on a daily basis. So just like we would plan for, oh yeah, I'm making this phone call, I have this podcast or whatever. Okay, and when is my exercise? What am I doing? How am I making sure I'm eating healthy throughout the day? All these things. Like, we need to do that for ourselves. Just like in a business, you would have operations and you would have HR and CFO. Well, you need to play all these roles and make sure you protect these actions in your daily schedule. And then there is a cognitive side, which ties a bit to what you were referring to, that the tendency sometimes, if lots of no's are coming, that it can get to a point where you take it a bit personally, right? And what the important piece there is to manage your thoughts, manage your thinking, and not let your thoughts spiral you down in sort of catastrophic thinking, and rein it into more realistic. For example, yep, I've been getting no's 3 weeks in a row, let's say, and I remember that I got lots of yeses before. What I have control over is not what I'm going to be hearing, is the seeds I'm planting. So I'm going to keep planting and make sure I exercise, because that I have control over, which all maintains my overall psychological health and allows me to be ready when the yes comes.
Now, Maria, in your work you did as a bureau, I mean, I feel bad sometimes for speakers because we get obviously rejections and people don't want to book us, but in bureaus, I think you probably get even more because you're dealing with, your quantity is so much higher. I'm really interested, Maria, what did you do for your own resilience? How do you, from a psychological standpoint, what do you do to kind of help kind of prepare yourself for that kind of resilience in taking all those no's?
And actually, that's a really good point, because normally if a client goes to a speaker, you probably have a 50-50 chance. And if you're very good in your business and you're targeting very well, it's probably even 70 to 80% chance of converting that. In a bureau, because a client will go to several bureaus, and then each of those bureaus will all be working and to try and come up with answers, I think it works out as something like 1 in 5, like a 20% conversion rate, which is, so 4 times you're going to get rejected. So for me, it was very, very easy. I knew, okay, as soon as I get 4 rejections, I've got a yes coming. I've got a yes coming very soon.
Play the maths of it.
Yeah, I played the maths. I played the numbers game. But also the other way I looked at it was, it's a no this time, but I'm going to get them next time, because the client's going to do another event. They're going to do more, and I would work harder to make sure that I now have a relationship with them. I now understand them. I understand what they were looking for. I know, hopefully I found out who they've booked and who they've booked with, so I can go back and say to them, how did it go? That was such a great speaker choice. I would never say that they'd made a mistake not working with me, but of course they had. And I would go back and ask them for, what went right, what went wrong. So what are we going to do differently? How are you going to beat that next? So I didn't take it personally. They weren't rejecting me. They were rejecting the speakers. wasn't me. So it was, so it worked for me.
You mean, so Maria, you mean they're rejecting me then? Is that what you're saying?
So I did
I know what you're saying. It's okay.
Yeah, but actually I know a lot of my former bureau colleagues did take it personally.
Yeah.
And I never did, so that didn't hurt me. Other stuff I take personally because I'm Italian, and we get emotional. But you know what? I've written down all the things that you've said, MH, because I have to say the only one that I'm doing well at is nutrition at the moment, because I've changed my diet. I'm not great at exercise or sleep, and I'm not prioritizing my relationship. So I'm going to go and I'm going to prioritize this on a daily basis now. I'm actually going to put it in my diary. So thank you for that. The cognitive part I'd like to ask you a bit more about, because managing your thoughts, it sounds really simple, but in the heat of the moment, so being a passionate Italian who flies off the handle, help me to manage my reactions and my thoughts.
Okay, let's talk, Maria. No,
yeah,
we can talk more
I need to lie on the couch, I think.
Okay, there's a few things. Number one, when we are going through challenging situation, most human brains will be having negative thoughts because it's a challenging situation. And most human brains will also have negative thoughts that are, in fact, more negative than they need to be, like spiraling down. So number one, this is a bit normal for all of us. Okay. And so, but first thing I will say is that our tendency to go to the negative thinking and to spiral it down will be made worse in moments where we are tired, vulnerable, have not been taking care of ourselves, starting to be sick, all these things. So as we build, just back to these 4 strategies we were talking about, you can see how in itself, and we know this from research, it's not just sounding good, it's actually based on research, all this actually builds up how your brain on its own will react better. So that's already a good start. Okay. So, but let's say you're there and still, you're seeing the thoughts and go in that direction. One of the strategies that sometimes can click us back into a more realistic perspective is to ask ourselves, and sometimes ask others if they're the ones sharing their spiraling down, is to say, hold on, do you know that 100% sure? Okay, so for example, you're a speaker. Let's say you're an actual speaker who just been told no. So you cannot say, oh, I'm just an agent and that's not me. It's actually you personally, like James and I, being told no, right? So you could have the thought of, I'm no good, no one wants to hear me ever. And then if I say, okay, do I know this 100% sure? Then I'm forced to say, well, no, right? Because obviously I have spoken before, and quite possibly I'll have other ones, but I've had quite a build-up of volume over here. So no, realistically, I cannot say this. What I can say is this one individual at this point in time has not chosen me for this event. That is a factual description of what has happened. Yeah, but that's it. So now I'm bringing it back to a more realistic perspective, just because I challenged it by asking myself, do I know this 100% sure? So that could be one of the ways to rein back your thinking in a more realistic perspective. I know some speakers will have what Jane Atkinson calls the attaboy file or the attagirl file. And I love that concept because, right, when you receive all this positive feedback, those positive testimonials, all this, all goes in the file. And if you see yourself spiraling like this, you get that file open, because what it does, it's just a different way to get to the same place of broadening the perspective to keep it real. Yep, this person does not select me. We're not saying they did not. That is a fact. And a number of other people's have, and have been a good fit for many other groups.
I like that. I actually have a praise file. So I've done that. But what I was thinking of doing was printing them all out and actually wallpapering my walls so that
whatever works for you, Maria.
I actually had someone the other day. I do a similar. I actually got a spreadsheet of them, like all these columns of people, things that have responded. And a lovely client of mine, actually in Canada, in Quebec, sent me 400 the kind of survey results of 400 people that attended one of my events recently that I was doing for them. And this was like fantastic. And half of it was in French. So I didn't even but I could sense that it was like pretty good. So I kept it. And someone said to me that day, you know what you should do? You should print off these things in little bits of paper and have a big bowl next to you. And
Oh, and
anytime
you're
you're going to
pulling
just
them.
like put your hand into that bowl, pull out one of those little
That's
I don't
good. That
intellectual
saves
red
me
balls.
wallpapering.
There you
Yes.
go. You don't have to do that as well. Fantastic.
That's such a good idea. Actually, that's such a good idea to give as a present to your partner. So that ticks the relationship box. Lots of
Yeah.
praise as well. And there you go. I'm making a note there. Brilliant.
But one thing I was just going to say, MH, just on that, and I kind of wanted to get your on the receiving feedback. I guess is kind of what the question I'm looking to ask here. A couple of weeks ago, I got an email out of the blue. I actually get hate mail email for the other James Taylor, which is kind of bizarre. When you receive the James Taylor, the singer-songwriter, some people, for some reason, they go onto my website and they think I'm the singer-songwriter James Taylor. And the other James Taylor had to cancel a load of concerts recently in America and Canada. And for the past year, I've been getting his hate mail. And it's kind of interesting that when you receive someone else's hate mail, because there's no emotion for me in someone else's hate mail. And I actually said, I'm actually not going to forward on to, I know his management who are based in Vancouver, funnily enough, but I'm not going to forward on. Why should I put that onto someone else? Mm-hmm. And then I did get an email a couple of weeks ago from someone completely out of the blue I'd never heard of before, who kind of was not particularly nice about, my style, the way I do things, the way my brand, I guess, online and what I was doing. And I kind of stopped for a minute and I thought, kind of what you did there, really? Is that really true? And kind of ask, and then I had to do a little bit of a check with a couple of people. Is that really the case? And it kind of there wasn't really anything there, but I did think, and I've seen this a number of times, some of my coaching clients who are speakers, it does appear that women get more of those types of messages from other speakers, male and female, of picking things about them. And so I wonder, like, from your perspective of taking feedback, how to take feedback and how to quantify it, so in order to maintain your mental health, because you want to take feedback so you can get better at what you do, but how you can ensure that you can stay strong with that as well.
Absolutely. And love the way you're asking this question. And in fact, one thing I'm going to share something I do in protection for this in some ways, not just for this, for other demands, but and maybe I'll be interested in what you do, James, for yourself. But if I'm giving a talk on any given day, I very deliberately plan what I'm going to do prior to this talk. I'm going to use my time, prepare myself, that kind of thing. And it does include not looking at emails or responding or looking at social media, none of this, so that I can protect the frame of mind that I bring to this group, to this conversation, to this event. So that's one thing I will say, because there are things like this that even if you may have all the good management, self-management, I'm going to block this out, perspective, strategies, you can't. The reality is that we're human. We actually really care about how people receive what we bring, how they perceive us, and that kind of thing. And so it could have an impact, right? So you want to make sure you protect yourself for sure on that day that you're presenting. But to go back to the broader question of feedback, I think it's you want to think about which feedback do you need and from whom, and where you will accept it and where you will not. Right? So it's not. Do you really need? I mean, it reminds me of Brené Brown's comments about, if you're not in the arena, then I don't need to hear what your thoughts are. If you are, then we can talk. Mm-hmm. Right. And so sometimes you'll have people who will share all kinds of perspectives that either you're not needing to know, you already have other people providing this type of feedback, you already have your teams, you already have made your choices, you're already clear that not everyone's going to love you. And that's it. So even though I think absolutely agree with you, we do want to get feedback, hear feedback, and grow and learn from it. Absolutely. We at the same time are not just an open open area to just hear everything. We have to be selective about what we're looking for.
And that's not even getting into the social media side of things, when like maybe a speaker or a thought leader puts their content out there into the world and they have all the comments as well. Maria, I don't know how because you work with lots of speakers and you coach lots of speakers as well. Is that in terms of how you give feedback to speakers? 'Cause I guess this is a person you're trying to support them, but sometimes you have to be honest. You have to kind of say, how do you what's your take on that?
So, I mean, for years, my nickname has been the Velvet Hammer, because I tend to hit people over the head with my feedback, but I don't leave any bruises. I don't leave any marks. I got that when I was a management consultant many years ago.
Velvet Hammer, wonderful.
It's true, but it's true. It is definitely what. So I am a bit, but I ask permission first. I say, this is my style. This is how I do it. If that works for you, we will work great together. If you need to be sort of mollycoddled and cuddled, and that's not me, I'm not the right person to work with, because I want to get you from A to B as fast as possible. I'm going to tell you what's right. I'm going to tell you what's wrong. I'm going to tell you what to do. And some people love that and some don't. So I think you have to be upfront about what you're like, but I think also people can tell that that's what I'm like. I'm Simon Cowell in non-polar neck trousers.
You are the nasty Nick. But I think there's certainly a value that, because you have walked the talk, you've gone through this as well. I think if it was someone that was just coming out of the blue, that you had no kind of context with, because you have an intuition about things that's been built up over many, many years.
Well, that's 10,000 hours, isn't it? I've done probably 50,000 hours really at my age. So I must do the count up. So I've definitely done more than 10,000. So I think when you've done it for so long. But coming back to sort of the last year and what speakers have been going through, MH, it'd be really interesting to know about sort of, a lot of speakers, and I personally, I don't know about James, but we've reviewed our values and we reviewed our goals. Some of us have actually done that dreadful thing of that horrible word of pivoting. How can this positively influence how speakers take the next step in their businesses?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think you're right. I think, a lot of people, either forced or by choice, have taken the time to review their values. But for speakers, it's fairly important that we are obviously very knowledgeable about our topic, but that we really believe in it, and that we feel very tied to it from a values perspective. And so it would be true in an organization, right? You would want what the organization is doing and their values to all be very aligned, and that usually leads to successful outcomes, at least in part. But for us as speakers, same thing. The more we have clarity on our values as they are today, and the more we tie our work and our presentations and what we bring to the world to this, then the better we'll be. We'll be even more compelling, even more in our conversations, and being influencing the people who are here with us. So that work on our values and bringing it in what we do as speakers is especially critical. What I think is also very important is that, pre-pandemic, there would be conversations with clients, or sometimes clients via bureaus, of course, about what we do and that kind of thing. Now, there is even more scrutiny on everything, including who do we bring in? What will they talk about? What's their expertise? How much do they cost? And right, so it's as if in every conversation, whether it's directly with a client or with a bureau for a client, we're all wanting to be even more compelling in our message. And so as we have more clarity on our values, that translates in our message, and everyone wins. Everyone wins, because if they pick this individual speaker for this talk, it's a great fit. If they didn't, it's great also, because they'll find another good fit, and that's better for everyone. So I think it has been a demanding 18 months. It's now coming back to an interesting new next life, which is very it's fabulous to see. At the same time, let's stay as close as we've become to our values to bring this to our work.
James, do you have a final question for MH?
No, I would just say interested, the work you do. I'm wondering, in this past 18 months, if it's actually a bit of a boom time for you, because I know you studied, when you did your PhD, we were talking about this earlier, but you did kind of telehealth. Yeah. So I know a lot of my clients, like GlaxoSmithKline and Roche and a lot of pharmaceutical companies, they're obviously, telehealth is massive now, and they have e-detailing and all these kind of amazing things now. So the work you do in terms of being able to work maybe directly with clients, maybe corporate clients, has this been great? You suddenly have the ability to do consultations without actually even having to be in the same room as them anymore.
Yes, well, you know what? Here's the thing. Before the pandemic, I was in the process of letting go my physical office because such a large portion of my clients were virtual that sometimes I'd show up there for 8 hours of work with one person walking in and the rest being on video. So I don't know how that sort of naturally occurred, but that was for me, that's how my work was evolving, both in my work as a psychologist and my consulting and advisory work. And the major change from my work was the speaking. That none of it, almost none of it actually, maybe 1% had been virtual. The rest was in person. And so that's the largest change for me. The advantage I had is because I had been working virtually for a while, I was used to seeing myself in the corner of the screen and not looking at this and just, being present. And so that's the one way in which it helped. And also perhaps the knowledge that I already had from 20 years ago, that you can build connections, you can build trust, you can help people change, you can do all this in a virtual way. There are tons of wonderful advantages to in person. There's no question there. And there's also lots of advantages to virtual.
Yeah, they have to do. And I guess because you are in Canada, you have lots of very dispersed populations. It's a massive country, so suddenly people were able to get access, whether it's to training or kind of telehealth in some way that it had been a bit of a struggle to get access to that before.
Yes, yeah, access in Canada and around the world, really. So yeah, no, it just and also it's wonderful to see teams. I'm sure you've seen this as well, James, where in the past as speakers, they would bring us in for a team that they could either travel there or were present there. Whereas now you can reach much larger groups within particularly large organizations where they, for the first time, or more and more now, but will experience a meeting or presentations or a keynote together. And that leads to wonderful outcomes.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, MH, I'm sure people are interested to know a little bit more about you after hearing this discussion that Maria and I have had with you today. Where is the best place for them to go to learn more about you and your work?
Thanks for asking, James. LinkedIn, always good. So DR, like Dr. MH, like Marie-Helene, and then Pelletier, my last name. And then if not, my website, same, drmhpelletier.com.
Fantastic. And we're going to have all these links here. And I think we've got links to your LinkedIn and other places at speakingbusiness.tv, and people can watch the kind of replays of this as well. Maria, I know we always do our little kind of tool of the week. We didn't do it last week. We got carried away. So do we have time to do this week before we finish up?
We do have a tool, but actually I think MH has an offer as well, which I think we ought to share, which is your newsletter, isn't it? Which comes with a resilience planner. How cool is that?
Yes, I know. Well, thank you for that's right. I had forgotten about this. So yeah, if you come to my website, like many of us, there is a chance to sign in for the newsletter so that we can stay connected, and that's unique content that I put there. It's not anywhere else. But as you do this, we will send you a resilience planner, because it does, like I said, right? We so need to translate these actions on a daily basis that this is something a lot of people I work with find valuable. So I've decided to offer it there.
I want that, so I'm going to be signing up to that. But yes, coming back to my tool, I have a tool for anybody who has a podcast. And as you know, there are so many different podcast platforms. And when you're sharing your podcast episode, you have to say, here it is on Apple, here it is on Spotify, here it is on Google, etc., etc., etc. Well, I have to give credit to Amy Rowlinson, who taught me about this. If you sign up for podfollow.com, all you need is one link. You can get the link from Podfollow, and when I receive a link from you for your podcast and I use my phone or whatever device I listen on, it takes me to my preferred listening platform. So it will take me to whatever I happen to use. How clever is that?
Very nice, very nice.
So and one link.
And this, I don't know, we seem to be everywhere with this show now. I know this is going out live just now on LinkedIn, on our Facebook groups, probably Facebook pages, and the podcast goes out in different places. You can't escape us now, Maria and I.
No, that's
We're
true.
everywhere. No. We are omnipresent as well. MH, what a pleasure having you on the show today. I hope we get a chance to meet in person in my beloved Canada next time that we're over there. Maybe I'm going to be speaking over there soon. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you to both of you. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much for tuning in.
Bye.